I wasted a lot of opportunities in my life. I chose to follow a path of self indulgence instead of pursuing paths that were beneficial to my financial independence. When I speak out against the liberal plantation and the evils of welfare, I'm doing it from experience. We adults like to scold children for not taking responsibility for their actions. We need to start taking our own advice. Before I go any further, I want to state unequivocally that no matter how we are raised, that at some point the failure of our lives are our own fault. But that doesn't leave parents and society blameless in our outcomes. I always speak positively about life in the 50s and the 60s because that was the boom period for the black family. In the face of real systemic racism, the vast majority of blacks were born into wedlock with a completely different value system than we have today. Today's liberal would see there being less stigma towards teen pregnancy as a positive thing. The shame that came with having a child that got pregnant was a necessary deterrent, but also served another purpose. It forced the two teens to grow up and take adult responsibility for their actions. It was disgraceful for a man not to take care of his family. More often than not, teens that got pregnant got married, and the father began to earn a living to support the child. In the 50s and 60s, teen unemployment was at an all-time low, so it was quite easy for a teen to find employment then, especially for a black male, believe it or not. This is the proper way of handling the unfortunate, life-altering situation that is teen pregnancy. While it gives the parents and the child the best chance for a successful life. In today's leftist world, shotgun weddings are frowned upon. The father, when it comes to teen pregnancy, is not forced to provide for the child. And I'm speaking only when it comes to teens, not adult fathers. The mother is encouraged to seek government support to provide for the child. Subsidizing the detrimental and irrational behaviors of teens is not a deterrent. It's an invitation. Teen mothers that depend on the government grow up to be adult mothers dependent on the government, that raise children that statistically will become dependent on the government. Men are no better. They don't get no slaps on the back. They allow the government to become daddies to their children. They make all kinds of excuses as to why they are not in their children's lives. The most common excuse is that the child mother is some type of hindrance, which I find to be a poor excuse. We men, we fight for a lot of things, but our children is seldomly one of those things. We abandon our rightful place at the head of our families, and we do this selfishly. Welfare may have forced the man out of the home, but if he were doing what he should have been doing from the beginning, the woman would not have to resort to welfare to provide for the family. So the man gets no sympathy from me from being forced from the home. It should have been his motivation to take back his rightful place at the head of the family, not to delegate it to the government. Women, you are not blameless either. You chose to take the government as your spouse. You slept with a man that you determined was not shit and would not be shit anytime soon. That is why you went to the government. Let's not be deceived. If welfare is an option for you, then you shouldn't be having a child in the first place. Because sorry to say this, you can't afford it. If you can't afford a child, don't have it. It is not fair to bring up a child in poverty. There was a time when being on welfare was embarrassing. I'm old enough to remember paper food stamps. As a child, I was so embarrassed to use those stamps when my mother would send me to the store. Today, we have EBT cards, which was a leftist creation to make welfare recipients more comfortable in their poverty. The entire welfare process should be uncomfortable and tedious to prevent people from wanting it. The more lax the rules became, the more people gravitated towards it. Teen pregnancy and single motherhood are often the result of a bigger problem. Children who grow up without a father are 5 times more likely to live in poverty and commit crimes, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in prison. They are more likely to have behavioral problems or run away from home or become teenage parents themselves. It is a cycle that we can no longer allow to repeat. At some point, we have to admit that what we are doing now is not working. Here's some quick stats from the National Center for Children in Poverty. 19% of children in the U.S. lives in families that are considered officially poor. Child poverty rates are highest amongst Black, Latino, and American Indian children. Across the state, official child poverty rates range from 11% in New Hampshire to 32% in Mississippi. According to both conservative and liberal studies, to avoid poverty, an individual only has to do 3 things. The first being graduate from high school. The second one, wait until at least the age of 21 to get married, and wait until you're married to have children. And the final thing, have a full-time job. If you do all 3 of those things, your chances of falling into poverty is just 2%. 2% chance of falling into poverty if you do those 3 things. And you'll have a 74% chance of being in the middle class. So if you just do those 3 things, and I'll repeat them again so you don't forget. The first one, at least have a high school diploma. That's the first one. At least graduate high school. The second one, wait till you're at least 21 to get married. And when you do get married, wait till you're married to have a child. And the third and most important one is to have a full-time job. If you do those 3 things, your chances of, you have a 98% chance of not being poor. 98% chance of not being poor if you do those 3 things. But this is the road that Democrats don't want you to go down, because it's the road that leads to financial independence, which is something they can't and won't allow. Why do you think that Barack Obama and the current Democrats that's running for president think that increasing those on welfare is a good thing? Why are they the ones that advocate for less restrictive welfare policies? Why did they try to curb the stigma surrounding welfare? Why is poverty so prevalent amongst blacks, the number one supporter of the Democratic Party? The answer is the same for all questions. And it is that Democrats designed it that way. As I always state, all roads the Democrats control lead to poverty. They can't exist without a poor base. Poor people are the most vulnerable because they are always hopeful for relief from their current predicament. Democrats insidiously use this to manipulate them for votes. I don't think that people really appreciate how much the Democrat Party is reliant on a poor class. If they were ever to lose that base, the party as we know it would cease to exist in its current form. But the destruction of the Democratic Party is a pipe dream. Until the poor base of all races all races, because it's not just black, it's not just Hispanic. We have white, Asian. Poor is universal. Poor is one of the only things that is universal. Until we wake up to the machinations of the Democratic Party, we will never be able to destroy it. We have to raise this generation with values that we ourselves may not have been raised with. Values like hard work, perseverance, respect for others and community, along with the 3 keys to escaping poverty. And I'll repeat them one more time. Graduate from high school. Wait till you're 21 to have to get married and have children, and most importantly, have a full-time job. If we do those things and the children are receptive to those ideals, we can begin to retrain future generations to pursue lives free of the liberal plantation. Let's not let poverty be the legacy that we pass on to the next generation.